Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, show number 61, August 28th, 2021. Guys, it's that time of year. You can feel it in the air, the weather. There's a buzz around the city. It's almost football season. We're a week away. Mike, welcome back. I think everybody knows what this show this week is going to be all about. And
Yeah.
Jay, Mike, how you guys doing, man?
Good. Mike, thanks for joining us. It's been a minute since we've had you on, but we knew we weren't going to do this season preview without you. Thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm already in mid-season form. Football, high school football. I've been to the last two nights. I've been to high school football games. So, yeah, I'm ready for the college and the NFL and all of it. Bring it all.
You're working chains, right? You're chain gang.
Yeah, I'm chain gang, man. Chain gang in it. What better seat to get? You know, I'm trying to get the chain gang for the Texas game.
See, but this is why this is the kind of coverage. This is the level of like intel that we're able to get. We've got Mike working the recruiting front, working the chains at the high school games. He can ask the questions that some of the other guys from other services can't ask. And he can ask it right in the middle of the game. Like, does it get any better than that? Like, that's the kind of.
Yeah, doesn't get any more insider than that, baby.
No.
That's why we got you on, man. Loving it.
No.
Loving it.
Yeah, I'm not in mid-season form, though. My feet hurt today.
Don't worry, it'll come.
Yeah,
it'll come.
Sure.
But now, thanks again for joining us, man. Kerry, we got a lot to hit on today. Where are we going to start?
Well, yeah, we have a lot to hit on. A new coaching staff, some interesting positions on the roster. We got a schedule that is interesting. We've got a national scene that's looking interesting, and all those things bundled up with conference realignment, all the action that's happening in college football right now. So we got a lot to hit. We've talked about this coaching staff a lot since Tom Herman was let go, Steve Sarkisian was brought in, the assistants were hired. We've hit a lot on the coaching staff, and we'll talk about the coaching staff a little bit today, but let's really talk about what we're actually going to be seeing on the field. And let's get in here with the offense. Mike, what are you feeling about this? I mean, we kind of know who the bell cow is going to be on this offense, right? But there's more to this team winning games and scoring points than just Bijan Robinson. Maybe there's not. Maybe that's all it's going to take to carry this team. But where do you want to start with this? What are your feelings on this offense?
Yeah, I don't know what to really expect. I mean, obviously with Sarkisian coming over, calling plays, you expect to be a little more dynamic. Now, does he have the bell cows to go out there and be as dynamic as he wants to be? Obviously, we know he has a preseason All-American and Bijan Robinson, so pretty good place to start. But, there's question marks at receiver. And I think the range of outcomes this year for offensively just seems to be all over the map right now. So it's going to be real interesting to see what's going to happen in week one against the Louisiana team that's pretty good. But I think we'll get a good idea of what's going to happen here. So just some of the kind of the storylines for the offense for me. Obviously, what's going to happen with QB1 is going to determine a lot on what happens with the season, how that quarterback plays. I still think you're going to need both guys in the end. And then the play calling. Can Sark bring the same type of play calling? Can he do what he wants to do? Because there may be some personnel issues at receiver where you're probably stronger at tight end. So that's another storyline, the playmaking at tight end when you have depth, or the playmaking at receiver when you have depth at tight end. How are those things going to mesh? You do have a veteran offensive line, so you should hopefully be better in that area. And then obviously a plus running game when you have the man at the helm, number 5, toting the rock, hopefully 25 times a game, unlike a Tom Herman-led offense from last year. So first reference of the day already.
Oh, man.
Hey, we 5 minutes in? 5 minutes. I mean, but hey, that's a part of the deal right now with this transition, the way that it is, because our expectations going into last season were pretty high on this show. In general, I think Longhorn fans as well had pretty high expectations going into last season. And while we're talking about expectations, let's focus a little bit on the quarterback situation here. A couple of shows ago, Kerry and I had some differing opinions. I was really in the camp that I thought this was going to be Casey Thompson's job, and it's definitely not looking that way at this point. Kerry was definitely more in the Hudson Card camp, and it's looking like Card's going to be the guy. Mike, I wanted to ask you, those quarterbacks do have different skill sets. They are. It's not just one is you're going to get a mirror of the other if you put the other one in the game. So with Hudson Card looking more and more like the guy every day, what will Hudson Card bring to the table as a starter that maybe Casey Thompson won't?
Yeah, I think for me, Card's arm just sticks out. I mean, I went to the open practice the other day, and I mean, it's just a different arm. We haven't really seen that kind of arm around these parts in a little while. Yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous arm talent that he's got. Obviously, he's a younger player, so Thompson having the kind of the leg up with fourth year in the program. It's definitely going to be an interesting decision. You're going to need both of these guys at some point this year. I mean, the seasons are 12 games long, but jumping off the page, you just see Hudson Card's arm talent, and you're like, man, this guy can really fit it in windows that Sarkisian wants to fit it in. So, Kerry, what are your thoughts on Card's ceiling this year?
Well, I think one of the things so it's interesting to mention that because my thought on it being Card versus Thompson was about the ceiling. I think just his ceiling throughout his entire time at Texas is higher than what Thompson, what his ceiling would be. As for this year, though, that's a different story because, I mean, we're talking about a guy that's going to be, either one is going to be essentially a first-year starter. And is the Hudson Card that people expect to see by the time he's done at Texas going to be the product that we see on the field this year? And that's not going to be the case. So I think what his
where do you go if you're Sark? Do you start with Card? And
I think so. And that's been my gut on this the entire time, is just that, Sark is probably looking at a guy that he can really mold. That's a younger guy on campus. He's got the skill sets that Sark looks for, and he has the pedigree coming, quarterback factory, Lake Travis, that he's coming out of. I think he's got something he can work with there. He protects the ball. That's been, for me, the biggest story throughout all of camp, is how Card protects the football as opposed to Thompson. Thompson's been turning it over. Not a lot, but enough to where there's been a noticeable difference in what they're doing protecting the ball. And when you're going to focus on the run game and the short to intermediate passing game, those things matter, especially against week one against a really good Louisiana team. You can't give away possessions. And yeah, I mean, I think his ceiling for this season is, I think people might be a little bit disappointed if they have really high hopes and seeing him just light things up. This isn't going to be I don't know. I mean, hopefully I'm wrong, but one of these just all-world freshman quarterback type seasons that people talk about. I think he'll be steady. I think he's going to do enough.
Do you think he has the locker room?
Well, and that's the thing.
I don't know.
Thompson's been there 4 years. I mean,
yeah.
See, that was where I was coming from the Casey Thompson perspective, was the guy that had the locker room throughout the entire summer. This was his team. He led this team through, the not official, the unofficial practices, sort of the things that they could only do with the strength and conditioning coach and things like that. Thompson was that guy throughout all of that. But what Card brings to the table, and you guys hit on that a little bit ago, was, Kerry, you said he does the things that Coach Sarkisian needs for this offense to be the most successful. And when we're talking about play calling, we're talking about putting these guys into positions to be successful as an inexperienced quarterback. Sark said, what we do is we take whoever the starter is, we figure out what they do best, what they're the most comfortable with, and those are the plays that we call. Obviously, you build towards opening up your playbook as the season progresses, but with Card, I think you have an ability to unlock more of your playbook quicker because of the skill set that he brings, because of that, throwing it into tight windows accurately and not turning that ball over. And Kerry, I think for me, that's the difference here, is that the reports that have been coming out of camp have said both quarterbacks had a good week this week. Both quarterbacks, Casey Thompson had a better week this week. Maybe Card came back a little bit to the mean, but still isn't turning the ball over. But when you hear things like, we're going to take what the quarterbacks are most comfortable with and call plays accordingly, that for me, it leads even more towards the fact that Hudson Card might be the guy, because with this offense, with the long looping, deep crosses, the intermediate routes that are going to be there for the tight ends and things like that. And then obviously, depending on the running game a lot, being able to put a guy in a position that can take those chances, but put the ball where it needs to be accurately, and is going to be more comfortable making some of those throws right off the bat. Yeah, there's going to be some growing pains, but I feel like that's why Card is going to be the guy.
Yeah. One other thing you can't really discount too, though, I was having a conversation with my brother about this. Obviously, this is one of the more fascinating quarterback battles we've had in a little while, where both guys, it's like, man, like there's not really a separation, I feel like, in the fan base between like, who do you really want? I mean,
right.
Would you, like, Kerry, would you be upset if Casey Thompson started the year? I mean,
no, not at all. And that's what, like, my leaning towards Card being the guy on this,
right,
honestly has nothing to do, like, there is no personal bias here on it.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
I don't fit,
different.
like, I'm not a Card guy.
Right.
It's, to me, it's just kind of looking at those factors of, like, new head coach. You've got, we're going to get to, like, the offensive line and the running game. Like, you've got these things, the situation where you can rely on a young quarterback and not do too much too soon.
Right.
And that's really all it's boiled down to for me, is like, you've got this highly touted recruit that, you've got him in his second year in the program. Like, here's your opportunity to kind of ease him in without having to have him throw it around 60 times a game. So.
Yeah. And also the one thing that Casey has going for him, though, is that he might just be a gamer, though, honestly. I was talking to my brother about this. Like, some guys look really good in practice and some guys don't. And then it may be completely opposite when the lights turn on, which is, I never really thought about it that way, because you hear about the practice reports, and we've kind of seen this sometimes in the past where, oh my God, like this guy is, completely balling out, or this lineman is really turning the corner, and then it gets to the game time and it's like none of that stuff came to fruition. Right. So that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. But I think, yeah, if you're looking at it from a program perspective, I think the ceiling for Card overall, like you were talking about, in his senior year could be national championship type ceiling. Whereas I don't know if Casey Thompson in this year and next year has national title. And some of that might not be his fault, obviously, with, other positions. And obviously, it's a team sport. So, but quarterback being the most important position, I just think that if Sark wants to really take a shot at this thing, he's got a lot of pressure year one. I mean, there's a lot of talent on defense, which we'll talk about, and also Bijan Robinson. So, yeah, it'll just be interesting. I think we'll probably get a decision. What do you guys think? Probably maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. Obviously, the game week coming up.
I'd say it has to be early game week, right? Like, I don't know how you let this thing go, too long into the week without something. I mean, because whoever the QB1 is going to be is going to have to roll with the ones this week in game prep. It'll get out.
Card's been taking most of those snaps with the ones anyway. I mean, like, the guys in the locker room, I feel like they know who QB1 is already. Like, you get a sense for it. You get a sense for who that guy is in the locker room, and whether or not it comes to fruition in that way. I feel like the guys in the locker room pretty much already know. It doesn't seem to be this divided locker room either, because we've heard that in the past where, when you got Applewhite and Sims, and it's like, not everybody's on board with either quarterback. You have your Applewhite guys, you have your Sims guys. There hasn't been a quarterback battle where you actually see this sort of talent either, because with as talented as Hudson Card is, Casey Thompson isn't a slouch. Like, there's still a possibility that Casey Thompson could be the guy here in week one. And Mike, that was a good question to ask about whether or not, would you be upset if Casey Thompson's the guy? And I said, well, no, because
absolutely not.
If they're having to depend on the quarterback at this point to win these games, then I feel like there's going to be things that are going wrong in other places.
Yeah.
If they're having to throw the ball 50 times, 60 times, I know there will be games that they'll have to win that way. But you don't want to have to do that, especially when you're bringing in a quarterback room with 0 collegiate starts, with basically your only experience is half of a bowl game, which he lit it up. Casey Thompson lit it up, but that's all the experience that you're bringing back in your entire quarterback room. So yeah, to me, that's the thing, is Thompson could still be the guy, but either way, and we'll get into this, but it is going to be heavy running game. There's a reason Bijan Robinson was chosen as the AP first team All-American in preseason, like, because they know, like, people know that this offense is going to mostly revolve around that Heisman Trophy candidate, possibly. I mean, the guy has his own brand now, and he has his head on top of a Heisman Trophy thing on his shirt. I mean, like, the
what could go wrong?
Real. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what could go wrong here? The hype is real. Now, what are we going to see on the field is Sarkisian, because say whatever you want about Coach Sarkisian, he's an elite recruiter and he is an elite play caller. And we're going to see it right off the bat against a good Louisiana team. You know, how's he going to manage this offense? And we're only hitting on the offense right now. Defense is coming later, but like with this offense, I'm not worried, period. I know there's issues at wide receiver that we'll touch on. You know, we've got an O-line that we weren't necessarily too high on a couple of months ago, and they seem like everything's gelling and coming together. But, you know, where do you guys want to go from here after that? You know, quarterback is, you know, we pretty much know it's whatever we get here, Sarkisian's going to put them into a position to be successful, call the right kind of plays, no square pegs into round holes sort of thing. So let's touch on the running game real quick, actually, with Bijan and the rest of that which is actually, that's another, when we talk about a stacked or a talented position, you know, it starts at the top with Bijan Robinson, obviously.
Yeah, and I think you get in, I mean, I know we talked about the tight end room here recently, but like that running back unit is pretty damn solid. I mean, even beyond Bijan, you got Roschon Johnson, you got the Alabama transfer and Keelan Robinson. Like, there's some real legit talent back there. And obviously Bijan's going to be the bell cow. And like Mike said, if he's not getting 25 touches a game, you know, something's wrong. But like,
Right.
you know, but there are guys that can make plays back there, and I'm curious to see how they're going to get utilized, because they are playmakers. Like, and you can only have so many guys on the field. Like we talked about with the tight end unit. Like, if you're going 2 tight ends, pick your 2. I mean, there's a lot of other talent in there that just won't be seeing the field for a bit. And that's not even getting into someone like Whittington, who we did see in the backfield a little bit in that Alamo Bowl. Like, there's so many pieces that Sark can use in that running back unit. And that's where I'm fascinated to see how he makes it work, because Bijan's going to get his touches.
Right.
What are your expectations for Bijan this year? Realistically, if he's getting 25 touches a game, do you think he's first team All-American?
Yeah, I think if it goes the way that we want that it should go, if he's getting those touches, I don't see why he's going to be first or second team All-American just off of numbers alone. I mean, even if Texas isn't, which, and we'll get into this later in terms of predictions, I don't think Texas is winning the Big 12 this year by any stretch, but I do think that we're going to see flashes of the type of, you know, when we think of the mid 2000s, think about peak Mac Brown years, early 2000s and the mid 2000s, where they're scoring 40 or 50 every week. It seems like if you're not putting up 40 points, then something went terribly wrong. It was just expected almost. And I think with this offense, especially once it gets rolling and really oiled up, like that's what we're going to be expecting again on a week in and week out basis. Now, are they going to stop people? Well, you know, we'll see. But I think that if the offense is clicking like it should, with the talent that's there, then yeah, I think Bijan is a first or second team All-American. I don't think that's a question. Kerry?
Yeah, I agree. If he's getting the touches, I think he will be. I think if you want to start talking about higher accolades than that, we start talking about Doak Walkers and Heismans and stuff like that. I think that's going to be more on the team. I think, you know, when Deontay Foreman won the Doak Walker a few years ago, it was like even though the team wasn't any good, it was like who else was going to get it kind of thing. Like he just was that dominant during the season. But I think, if Bijan's going to make a trip to New York and be in the Heisman conversation, then I think this team has to win
at least 10, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking like win a Big 12. I'm thinking like the team has to exceed like kind of the team goal expectation that we're looking at this year.
Right.
Because we know how the Heisman works, and that's he can have a Heisman level season and still not get a trip to New York because, maybe Texas only won 9 games and didn't play for a Big 12 championship. So that's kind of that. I don't think that's fair, but I think that that's, kind of the reality of it with the Heisman. But I think it's totally, I think first team All-American, first team All Big 12, I think putting up some impressive, crazy numbers that we haven't seen on this campus in a while, I think is totally within reason. I mean, because he's that talented, and Sarkisian knows he's that talented. Like, there's not going to be any stupid mind games of like, oh, we don't want this guy to like, we don't want him to get too big of a head because we're giving him so many touches every game, or whatever weird mind games previous coaching staffs would have played. But like, yeah, I think he's, health permitting, on track to have a really, really, really good season and a potentially special season if some things break the Longhorns' way.
Is that where you are, Mike? Sort of, is that the expectation for you as well? Sort of that.
Yeah, I think the expectation for me is, at least 1,500 yards, I would assume, if you're getting 25 touches. There's going to be some games where he might not play the second half because the Big 12 is top heavy, and then there's some bad teams at the bottom. So he's going to have a chance to run up some numbers. But you can't discount Roschon being that second back. And I think that may eat into some of his, I guess it really depends on game flow and things that you need during different types of games. Because there's going to be some games where the hot hand might be Roschon Johnson for 3 series, where he's just running over people in the fourth quarter. And then you come in with Bijan the final series and just, hits that 80-yarder to, seal the game. So there's a lot of factors. So
yeah, I guess on that point, like, would any of you guys be disappointed if Bijan only has like 10 touches against Rice?
Not if he has 150 yards and 3 scores off of it.
Well, but like, if that's an opportunity for one of the quarterbacks to maybe start getting the passing game, like, and that's what, to Mike's point, but like game flow, like, there's a game flow aspect of like, do you need to risk and put that mileage on Bijan against teams that you should be able to handle fairly easily? And, because we all know how this, the message boards and sports radio and all that stuff where, Texas rolls out to a 52-10 win over Rice, and people are going to be going, why did Bijan only get 10 touches? So, but I think that's totally fine. Like, keep him fresh. I'd rather have him fresh towards the end of the year and he's still getting his touches and producing than, trying to force it too much when he doesn't need to be.
It gets dicked up against Rice on the 24th carry. Oh,
exactly.
Man.
Exactly.
Yeah. And again, like, this is a coaching staff that they're going to get the most out of the players that they need in the moment. And if that means Bijan's carrying the ball 20 times against Rice or 20 or whatever because they need it, then he's going to get it. And if he does, that's going to be one of those where we're going to see guys, there's enough talent on this team that we're going to see different guys be the best player on the field different weeks. Regardless, Bijan Robinson's the best football player on this team. That doesn't mean he's always going to be the most outstanding player of the game. And he's not going to need to be, because there is so much talent on this thing. You talked about Whittington earlier, Kerry, lining up in the backfield. He's going to be put into so many different positions. Again, it's not going to be, and I'm going to do it, it's not going to be a Tom Herman offense to where you're going to line up, go straight ahead. Like, this offense is made to make defenses uncomfortable. And these guys are so talented, and Sarkisian is going to put them into different positions, not just, let's just line up straight ahead and go. Like, we're going to see Whittington all over the place. We're going to see Kilvante Dixon, if and when he's healthy, to be all, like Jaden Alexis is a burner. He's going to, finding places for these receivers in the slot, especially
Xavier
to be
Worthy
put into different places. Exactly. Yeah. Not even talking about Xavier Worthy, who is by position, by trade, is an X receiver, is a guy that's going to line up on the line of scrimmage. But that's not going to be. He's not going to just be pigeonholed into that. He's not going to be stuck into that role all season long. They're going to be all over the field. And when you see Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Bijan Robinson, Jaden Alexis, Amiri when he's healthy, like when you see all of those different weapons on the field at once, and you don't know who do you double up? Who do you put your focus on? Where do you go with that? Like, and that's to me is when as we're sort of bridging into wide receiver discussion here, like Joshua Moore being a guy that can get behind a defense. Like these are all players that can make plays for you at any given time. And how do you guys feel? What are you guys feeling right now about this wide receiver room? Because again, at the top of this depth chart, I feel really, really good about it. After that, when we start getting into depth, injuries, consistency, that to me is where the wide receiver room gives me a little bit of pause.
I mean, for me, this position is the difference between 10 wins and 7 wins for me. And I am not that high right now on this position group. So it seems like Whittington's struggling with the hammy again. This guy going to stay healthy. He says he's okay. We'll see. We got to get him through. How can he be a difference maker if he's not on the field? Not to be Debbie Downer, but we've never seen Xavier Worthy or Jaden Alexis on this level. Troy Amiri can't seem to stay healthy. Marcus Washington and Avante Woodard struggle with consistency. Really, all you have is Josh Moore, and sometimes he disappeared, but I think that's more of a Tom Herman deal than, hey, let's rotate 15 guys at receiver. I'm nervous about this spot. I think this position group has one, or if they can get a second guy to really get going, then I think you're looking at 9 to 10 wins. If you can't get more than one guy going on this thing, then it's just going to be really tough, because then defenses are going to load up. If Whittington's not on the field to, be that second game breaker that everybody knows that he can be, if Xavier Worthy hits a freshman wall, like there's just so many factors that this position group, to me, it's the most important factor to the season, because if you're going to put Hudson Card out there with all this arm talent and you're struggling with drops, or you don't have your best players out there due to injury, and it's really sad, man. I'm so high on Troy Amiri. He just looks like an NFL player, and it just, I don't know what it is. He's got the brace back on right now, trying to get over that hump of, his injury. And so the talent's there. We know the upside of some of these guys, but it's like, can we see it on the field? Because I think Hudson Card's going to need some receivers to step up. And that's where we'll talk about the tight ends, which will kind of help, supplement that. But I don't know. Kerry, like, where are you at on this? I'm just not as high right now.
I think what's given me a bit of optimism with this wide receiver unit, like at this point at least, is I know we haven't seen it on the field yet, but I'm kind of trusting Sark to figure it out. Like, just with the way I keep going back to this as we've talked about this over the last few, however many months, like the way that he was able to hide Devontae Smith in that offense and move guys around, make it so difficult for the defense to pick up on a wide receiver that didn't have very much size, and he ends up winning a Heisman Trophy. Like, there's going to be some separation in this unit once the season gets going. And I think, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I'm kind of trusting the coaches to sort it out and have the right guys on the field, the ones that are being consistent. But I'm with you. I mean, if Joshua Moore gets hurt, like, then there's some legit. I'll be legit concerned. I think at that point you're honestly looking at taking somebody from the tight end unit and flexing them outside. Like,
Yeah.
because there's no other choice really.
Well,
And
you've
with
got the
Whittington,
bodies to
I'm
do it,
I'm
right?
I'm waiting to actually see Whittington do it before I honestly, like, before I really truly consider him like a player that can't come off the field. And like, I know that we know the talent's there, but like the injury issues, just God,
Because when you start
it's
the season with
incredible.
the hammy, you usually end the season with the hammy, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not something that you got to hope that for his sake they can get out, and whether it's against Louisiana or as this schedule starts to unravel, like finding time for him to be on the field, because it's not your hamstring isn't going to grab you when you're running some underneath stuff. It's when you're trying to open up and get and get out past somebody, and you're going, you just open the whole thing up and you go full bore, and then it's like, oh yep, there she is. Like, and that's when these guys are going to be the most effective, is when they're out running those big long looping crosses or getting behind DBs and opening up the field underneath. Like, so hopefully you would like to see him not have to be the guy immediately while he's trying to get back healthy with this. But again, like, who else is going to step up? If these guys are healthy, if I understand it's a big if the health is there, I do feel confident with this group at the top anyway. The guys that we've been discussing for the past few weeks, I feel confident about that. That's a big if though. And when you're starting to talk about making sure you see Whittington do it before we are buying into it, there is a huge question mark there. So, and again, most of these guys that we're talking about outside of Joshua Moore are freshmen or sophomores. Like, these are underclassmen that we're talking about leaning on here. Cavante Dixon, Troy
Casey
O'Meary.
Kane.
Yeah. I mean, like,
these other guys.
These are guys that are underclassmen that don't have as much experience, that because of a previous regime and their scheme, we haven't seen them unlocked yet. So there should be, there's good reason to have hesitancy about this position. I
do think there's
like,
talent there though. And that's the like, absolutely. I do think there's talent there though. And if the coaches are able to harness that, and to me, it's about consistency. And that's what, it doesn't matter if you're a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. If you're showing consistency and improvement, then get them on the field. Because I think that's what the offense is going to need. And like, there's good recruits in there that we're talking about. Like, we just need to see, like you mentioned, Jay, like, because of scheme or whatever reason, we haven't seen a lot of these guys. Like, why wasn't Marcus Washington getting more run? Like, that's a burner, a guy that, like, why haven't we seen more of him previously?
Well, because we were rotating like 50 guys. I think I was
right
there at one point.
yeah right. And that's right. I think you got some snaps in that K-State game, right? Like,
I was on the field on the 4th down against Iowa State.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was that you? That Dicker Dicker couldn't hit. He was reading the route tree.
That was the second option.
Oh, man. You were wide open though, man. You were wide open.
Oh God.
But no, it's really there. That's Mike. I think it's a really great point to make about how the basically this is going to hinge on the range of outcomes of this season. One of the biggest things that it will hinge on will be wide receiver play, because the range of outcomes and when we're starting to talk about more of our season predictions, we'll hit on this, but the range of outcomes being as wide as it is, I think it's a really great point to make, that the wide receiver group will play a big part of that, almost more than any other on this, especially on this offense.
Who's the guy that needs to get 800 to 1,000 yards for y'all to really be like the difference maker?
Joshua Moore.
Yeah.
Like, I need Joshua Moore to be the guy that coming in, I think that we thought he could be. Like, he's the only guy that we've been discussing that's not an underclassman, that has a lot of these reps, that when he's been getting the ball has shown that he can be the guy. Like, he's shown that he can be a lead receiver. And I'm not saying he's going to be the leading receiver on this team, but if Joshua Moore is having a good season, I think that is going to be a key to unlocking the rest of these guys, whoever it is, for me, I want to see Joshua Moore be that guy. Kerry?
Yeah, for sure. I think if Moore puts up those kind of numbers, like you're saying, Jay, then I think a lot of things go the offense's way in other departments. But I also don't know if it's necessary to have one guy put up those kind of numbers this season if we're seeing consistency across the board. You know, if you have 3 or 4 players that are really like, you know, hey, these are kind of our 4 guys that we're rolling with here, and you know, they're putting up, you know, one guy like our leading receiver maybe has like a 700-yard season. If there's other guys that are having like pretty productive freshman seasons or whatever, you know, however you want to call it, then I think it's okay. I think it's, yeah, I think if Moore does have those kind of numbers though, I feel pretty good about what this offense is doing.
So for me, it's if Whittington has those numbers, because I know Moore's going to get his. I think if Whittington has these numbers, I think that it's got a chance to be a pretty good season. I'm not saying we could win the Big 12. I think you can challenge for it. If you told me Whittington has 750 yards and 5 touchdowns, I would say Texas had a pretty good season.
I think I would agree with that 100% because that's going to open up so much for the rest of the offense.
So much.
So,
and I'm not as like, for me, I'm not as sure that Moore. I'm not as bought into like that it's as much of a lock from Moore, but I do think that it's a great point that because if Moore gets his, then and Whittington gets his, that is, again, those are the guys. And then anything you get out of Xavier Worthy, whether it's, you know, let's just say that guy, 3 big plays throughout the season where he gets over the top and gets past people and breaks the game open because of that, it's worth it.
Bonus.
I just want a jet sweep.
Yeah, exactly. Hey,
can we get Xavier Worthy on a jet sweep?
I think
let's do it.
Is DJ Johnson the special assistant to the jet sweep in this offense, or is that DJ Monroe?
Oh man,
might be Monroe. Yeah, might be Monroe.
Well, guys, we got a couple minutes here before we got to take a break. Do we want to hit on offensive line real quick before we take a quick break, and then we can discuss defense and get into the schedule?
Yeah, let's do that real fast, man. Let's talk about this offensive line because, again, a couple of months ago, we weren't necessarily as high, or I wasn't personally as high on this offensive line as I am now at this point. Just hearing the way that this has sort of come together, the guys that are getting the reps, the way that they're cross-training a few of these guys, and not cross-training, by the way, in the sense of Christian Jones. I feel like this offensive line has a chance to actually be a real positive on this. Mike, what are your thoughts on this offensive line?
Yeah, I think first it starts with Jake Major's development at that center position as a sophomore, Christian Jones' development at left tackle, taking over for Sam Cosme. And then really it's just, improvement from, the guys that should be improving as a new season. Denzel Okafor, if he can work on his pass protection, Junior Angelov just becoming a better overall prospect, and then Kerstetter coming back from, injuries. He should be that, that rock right there at right tackle. So I'm looking forward to big things from the offensive line, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like Jay said, gone from something that had some question marks to now feeling like it's going to be a unit that's a plus. And as with all this, injuries permitting, that can all change. But like, I think at this point, it's going to be a plus unit. And I mean, again, it's going to open up that running game and hopefully some good pass protection. But yeah, I feel good about it.
Yeah, Majors is a key. Majors is a key for me here, and having that guy as still technically classified as a redshirt freshman here, and to see how he's going to develop and just sit in the center of that line, and knowing that Kerstetter's out wide. Kerstetter's an all-conference guy for me. If he plays all 12 games at right tackle, he's.
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show. Thank Zoom for the break there, Jay. Let's get right back into it. And let you finish what you were saying about this offensive line before we move on to the defense.
Just basically, if this offensive line stays healthy, and even with knowing Kerry is there to fill in on in multiple roles if need be. Tope Amade also has shown signs that he can fill it in a spot, and there's word coming out that he's had a good camp. So, just knowing that there's some depth there, it makes me feel, like I said, a lot better than I was feeling a couple of months ago. And this unit's really going to gel. So, looking for big things from the offensive line this year, especially if Bijan's going to have the year that we expect him to have. And if these receivers, which I think we're all in agreement here, that this is going to be spread around quite a bit between this talent, whoever's on the field, I think that this offensive line is going to have to play well, and I think they will.
All right. Well, what do you think, guys? Should we go ahead and you want to jump into this defense here and talk about what could be the side of the ball that could really make or break this team this season?
Yeah. So for me, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. For me, kind of the storylines for me is obviously with Coach PK coming in. What's this defense going to look like? Because he's inheriting a lot of talent, especially on the defensive line. Which is going to really hopefully be the driving force behind getting done what he wants to get done, which is, I think he said in the press conference the other day that he wants to try to limit opponents to, 20 points a game. So that's a pretty bold statement for Big 12. I think he's going to have to figure out some issues maybe at linebacker depth. And then obviously you got to get your defensive backs to improve because this is a very, very experienced DB room, but the experience might not all experience is good experience, I guess. So I guess we'll kind of see, kind of how this shakes out for this year. And then obviously we going out and got a lot of guys in the portal, some guys that will be starting like Ray Thornton, Ben Davis will be, hopefully coming in to add a little bit of punch for the pass rush. Ovi Aguefo from Notre Dame, he's going to be a starter on the 3 linebacker sets. So, I think Darian Dunn has a chance to be in the mix too at corner as that 3rd or 4th corner, which you're going to need in the Big 12. And then is there anybody in the 21 class that, can make an impact? We've heard great things from Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle, and how, this kid is, I think Coburn called him the next Aaron Donald of the defensive line in the future, which is ridiculous praise for a true freshman.
No pressure.
A monster in high school. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So, I think the big thing comes down to pass rush, guys. Like the defensive line, the interior is going to be really, really solid with Coburn and Moro Ojimo. And, you can have Alfred Collins in there. So that's probably the strongest position other than running back and tight end, especially on this side of the ball. So what are your guys' overall thoughts on, the defense and personnel?
I feel pretty good about it. I think I think the defensive line, I'm feeling pretty confident about. I know, replacing Joseph Osai is going to be a task, but I think Ovi is going to be, I think he's a guy that's going to probably play on that edge, right? That's going to be able to try to get after the quarterback. And will he be as productive? I don't know, but we've been hearing good things. But I think that, God, there's just so much depth there. We talk about Byron Murphy, and it's kind of like, well, where does he even get in on this defensive line? Like, because who do you take out? Are you taking Collins out? You taking Coburn out? Ojimo? Like, where does Murphy fit? But he'll get time. I feel good about the defensive line, and I do feel fairly confident with the defensive backs. And I think if anything,
sell me on it, Kerry. Sell me on it.
Well, I do think the experience is there, and I think just kind of, again, the previous coaching staff, the way things were handled. You look at someone like Anthony Cook, who was on his way out, and now looking like he can be a real asset with this defensive back unit. We'll see what BJ Foster's role is here, but I think there is the experience there. Jameson, I think, is going to be up for a great season. I think Josh Thompson, I feel decent about the experience that's there, and that the coach, I trust this coaching staff to put them in the right positions to succeed. If anything, it's just the linebacking unit for me is going to be the big question mark, because with it being the Big 12, you look at, offenses like Oklahoma, if it's one thing to have a really great offensive line getting after the quarterback, but if the quarterback's getting rid of the ball quickly in that short intermediate passing game, and you don't have linebackers that can move, like they can just chunk yards on you, just dink and dunk all the way across the field. And that's where, for me, it's about the linebacking unit. So that's, I think if the linebackers can show up and play, and we know what Overshown is, but I mean, he's going to need help.
If the defensive line can keep offensive linemen out of the laps of these linebackers, so they're not having to make reads 7 yards down the field and they're actually able to read and react, that to me is gonna create a lot more success for this linebacker room. Who, and this is something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about on this show, but it's obviously a big deal to follow. It's going to be, that's a question mark. And for me, the biggest question mark on this defense will be that linebacker play. Will we see it right off the bat? Can we see some good linebacker play immediately? Yeah, we can, especially if guys like Collins and Ojimo, who, by the way, I feel like Ojimo is going to be that dude this year in the interior of that line. I feel like Ojimo is going to lead the team in sacks. Like,
playing out of position last year.
Exactly. Like, and again, like we talk about scheme, we talk about previous coaching staffs that have had these that are putting square pegs into round holes. Ojimo is going to be a difference maker in the middle of that line. And we were hard on Ojimo last year, and I feel like it was warranted. But again, he was playing out of position. And as the season went on, there was improvement there. You saw the guy become a better player despite not being played to his strengths. And so for me, the defensive line, especially Collins and Ojimo, Coburn, Sweat, whoever those guys are that are going to be on that defensive line, their job to keep those offensive linemen from getting to the second level, which will allow them to make it easier on those linebackers to make reads, to not have to make tackles backpedaling, to not, in a pass game, to be able to have a clear line of sight because they're putting pressure, they're pushing those offensive linemen back, they're not conceding any ground to that. Like, that to me is that this defensive line, and it's going to be fun to watch. It's where I'm going to spend a lot of my time, where my eyes are usually on the lines anyway when I'm watching a game, but especially right now, watching the way that this defensive line handles their business, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to see a lot of good results from this line, and I do think Ojimo there's a lot of talent there, and I just think he's going to be that guy that's going to step up above the rest. It could be any of them, though. It could be any of these guys that step up and either lead the team in sacks or quarterback hurries or whatever it is. Any one of these guys could do that. Now, when we talk about the linebackers, Luke Brockermeyer sort of coming out, and being a guy that stepped up, had a really good camp, and it looks like he's probably going to start at that Mike linebacker position. He's a guy that, are we going to get consistency out of Brockermeyer? I don't know, but if we do, that to me is going to be a key to this defense being successful, Mike.
Yeah, no. If you get plus play from him, I think that's
that answers my questions about the linebacking unit.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, because this Overshown goes down this year. I don't know what's going to happen. I know you have Binda and Jalen Ford, but I mean, obviously Overshown's head and shoulders, one of the best players on the defense, along with Coburn, and I would say Jamison are the three most important guys that you need to stay healthy to try to have a successful defense. Ojimo too is going to fall in that category once he gets locked into his natural position. But yeah, if you can get Brockermeyer, to give you something that we haven't really had in a long time. I think you guys touched on this previous shows. That middle linebacker position has been one of the weak links in the Texas defense for years.
Honestly, it's been that way going back. I mean, it was amazing kind of how even during the peak Mac Brown years, it's still there was never. I mean, you had guys like Aaron Harris, Robert Killebrew, Rashad Bobineau. I mean, it's always been interesting in Texas, that middle linebacker position. Defenses have been incredible, but it's always kind of like, who was the last great middle linebacker at Texas kind of thing. Like, you got to go back quite a ways.
Yeah, no, you really do.
So, but that's the thing. Like, if it doesn't, so you don't need that kind of like all-world talent there as long as it's working within the scheme. And that's where I think we're talking about Brockermeyer. Like, if he can do the job there, then I feel really good about what this defense can do, because there's so many different skill sets that can be moved around to stop different types of offenses. And like Overshown is such a versatile player.
Very.
And like it's just, I feel like if that could make everything tie together and click.
Who's your wild card on this defense, guys? Before we kind of move on, like, who's the guy that, if we said he has a good season or a plus season outside of like Brockermeyer, that, or if it is Brockermeyer, you know, we can let me know. But who is that guy that if you get plus production out of, that you go from a 7 to 8 win team to that 9-10 win team on the defensive side? That's not the, you know, the Coburn or the Overshown. Who's that guy that maybe we don't talk enough about for you guys?
Anthony Cook.
Yeah.
Because we know what Jameson can do.
Yeah.
And I think if Anthony Cook can put together that kind, like a real plus kind of, you know, like maybe a second team or honorable mention all conference kind of season, then I think that could be a big difference.
I agree with that. Jay, you got anybody that
maybe? If this defense is gonna take another step and become the defense that Kwiatkowski wants it to be, BJ Foster needs to have a great season. And we haven't necessarily gotten that the BJ Foster that coming in we sort of expected. Again, and I don't want to put blame on these players for a lack of development, because we've seen case after case after case of a lack of development for some of these 4 or 5 star guys that came in, and then they get drafted and all of a sudden they get good coaching and oh wow, these are great football players, you know? And so for me, I'll be watching outside of the defensive line, who I think will be strong no matter what. For me, it's BJ Foster. Like if we're talking about BJ Foster being in contention for all conference honors, that takes this defense from good to great. Mike, is there somebody that stands out for you?
Yeah, for me, so I'm a little nervous about the pass rush. We talked about the interior line, but you're going to have Ray Thornton on the outside, and you're also going to have Jacoby Jones. I'm a huge Jacoby Jones fan. I thought he didn't get enough snaps last year. And when him and Osai were together on the field, when they took Ojimo off of defensive end, they put Jacoby Jones there next to Osai. It seemed to create a lot of pressure. So I think if you can get Jacoby Jones an honorable mention type season, you know, I think he's got to be the guy to kind of create that pressure off the edge, unless Ray Thornton's really, you know. So one of those two guys, I think, can really go from good to great, like we've been kind of talking about. So that would be my pick.
Well, real quick, I think, what do you guys think of Brendan Schooler and where he fits into this defense? I mean, is that a guy that like could be that wild card we talk about with the defensive backs, like with him moving back to safety? Is he a guy that if he puts together like a season where we're like, wow, this is like, he was a real plus, does that change anything? Or is it, because it's going to be kind of either him or BJ Foster that's going to really take that other safety spot, right? I mean,
Thompson, yeah.
Or Jaron Thompson too. So like, I mean, where do you guys think Schooler fits in this?
For me, Schooler, I mean, that's found money, I guess, is you know, the best way to maybe describe it for me. I mean, if you've got to have the secondary play in the Big 12, because if you can generate pass rush, well, dink and dunk all day, you're going to have to be able to tackle, stop these long game-breaking runs from OU, Iowa State, and these teams that can really fling it around. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on Schooler if he has a productive season?
No, that's I think found money is a wonderful way to describe it, because just as when he transfers over from Oregon and plays receiver, and then it's like, you know what, like the best place for him to get playing time was going to be at safety. And with the camp that he's had and the skills that he's shown, it's like, that's going to be a guy to watch as the season progresses, just again, getting back comfortable into a natural position for him, what I feel like is a more natural position for him, and sort of seeing, again, over the top, you're going to have guys that are rotating in all the time. Like it's the Big 12. You're going to have to have, yeah.
I hope.
Quite possibly. We all hope so, that you're going to have guys rotate through there, whether it's Cook, Thompson, Foster, Schooler, Coffee, like those different guys, whoever it's going to be. But I think Schooler having a good year could make a huge. He doesn't even have to have a great year, just have a good year.
Yeah.
And this defense will be fine. You can't have a bad year, but you don't have to have he doesn't have to be great. Just be good. And I think you will.
Well, let's get into the schedule, man. Let's start breaking this thing down. Let's we kind of had an interesting breakdown of the schedule last season and how that ended up turning out. But let's
I
start
can't believe you
putting
guys
some
had me on the
predictions on
show
this.
after that.
Yeah. Well, I think you weren't the only one, Mike. That was
Yeah.
we were a little off
That's
base.
fair.
But let's get into this, man. Here we go. We got strength of schedule 4th in the country. This is not a cakewalk, and it doesn't start easy. Louisiana's coming into town. This is a top 25 matchup to kick off the season. What do you guys think about this? I think right now the point spread is, what did I last see?
6, right?
I think so, somewhere around there. I think,
6 now.
yeah, I've seen a little bit of a range on it, but like, without getting too much into the point spreads, how do you guys see this Louisiana game going?
Oh man, that's my bread and butter. No.
Well, just because I think it's hard for us to know because we don't know what we're going to see.
Yeah, for me, I mean, they returned 20 guys from a really good team, so they are missing their 2 workhorse running backs this year. They did graduate, so I think it's going to be on the shoulders of 5th-year senior quarterback Levi Lewis. He can fling it around. He's getting his top 2 receivers back. They have a solid defense. They're not the biggest defense. They do have a defensive tackle that's like 330 pounds in the middle of that defense, though, that's going to really test majors in these guys early on. And this is not going to be a cakewalk. Like, I want to get out of here with just a victory, essentially. I mean, Jay, what do you think?
Yes, same. I'd be happy with a last minute field goal win. I don't even care how they pull it off. Just get a win, really, because this is a tough team with a good defense. And like you said, Mike, a lot of returning guys with a lot of experience and a really good head coach. So like, just if you can get out of there, this is not your Louisiana, your Lulav of old, like this is a really good program at this point. Do I expect Texas to win on paper when you line it up across from each other? Should Texas win this game? Yeah. But that hasn't exactly worked out for Texas over the last decade when you just go player for player down the line either. So, yeah, I mean, I expect Texas to win this game. Will it be a tough one? Probably. But if Sark gets out and just, again, if we see the all gas and no brakes from the start here, I think we're going to learn a lot about Steve Sarkisian and who he wants to be as the head coach of Texas in game 1.
Exactly. That's you read my mind there. That's the thing. Like, having a matchup like this to open up the season, we're going to learn a lot about Sark and this coaching staff right out of the gate, about game management, personnel management, like it's going to be a full building for the first time, like in a while. It's going to, like, there's a lot riding on this. Like, we're not going to have to wait 3 weeks into the year to finally see this team get tested, kind of thing. Not that we really had to wait that long previous years, playing Maryland, but like it was, I mean, what can you do? Yeah, God, but like, yeah, we're going to learn a lot. I expect Texas to win this game. I think it will be close, but I think this is going to be a really good test, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to see what this team is all about week 1.
So W's for everybody?
Yeah. But that being said, though, like, well,
I know what you're going to ask.
No, well,
if we lose, what's the
well, see, that's the thing. Like, as we're sitting here talking about Louisiana and how just getting out of here with a win is great. Like, this is a hard one to kind of call. Like, if Texas does lose this game, is it panic button? That's, I made the Maryland reference. Louisiana is not Maryland.
No,
this
definitely.
is not that. And with a coach in his first year in the program, with what's looking like is going to be a redshirt freshman quarterback that hasn't started a game. Like, yeah, should Texas win on paper, but this is a close matchup. But
Yeah.
Texas, if the talent can be utilized properly, which we haven't seen in a long time, then this shouldn't be a close matchup, even with the returning players for Louisiana and the good coaching staff, because Texas does have the talent. But I'm still going with the win. I think Texas actually looks pretty impressive to come out. It'll be a closer game. I think, Texas wins by a touchdown, 10 points or so. But I think people are going to go, all right, this looks different. This is a different feel. So
it's the eye test, man. Like,
yeah,
all we do is
I think it's a different eye test.
We talk about it on this show. We say it a lot. It's the eye test. Like, you can lose this game and still pass the eye test. Like, I think that like Louisiana is a good enough team that you can pass the eye test and still not win. Like, would I be disappointed if Texas didn't come out and win this first game? Yeah, I would. But if you look like there's progress being made, if there's guys, because first game for a new head coach, he's going to want to come out and drop a 50 burger and show that he's here for a reason. Like, he's going to come out with a purpose. Now, there's another football team on the other side of the ball that's going to do everything they can to prevent that from happening. But I think that Sarkisian's going to come out with enough of a purpose, and this team will be prepared enough. And that's the thing that we're going to notice as we get through the rest of the schedule is I think this team is going to look prepared. I think this team is going to look like they're ready for battle as opposed to showing up and getting shell-shocked. You can't, going down 14 points right off the bat to a team that you shouldn't be down 14 points to, that sort of thing, which we've seen very recently. It's hard for me to imagine that Sarkisian is going to allow that to happen, especially in week one of his regime, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, there are some losses on this schedule for me, but that's not one of them.
All right. Well, the following week is going to be an interesting trip back to the old historic rival, and which will be coming back as a historic rivalry once the move to the SEC is complete. Arkansas is a team that did not have a good season last year. They're in the midst of, whatever you want to call a rebuild, but I think the coach there is doing a decent job of kind of putting this program back together. Going to Fayetteville is always a tough trip, but this is another game. Like, Texas is clear talent advantage.
Isn't this
Sark's
a night game?
Yeah. Sark's familiar with the SEC. I think, what do we think about this trip to Arkansas?
Yeah, so for me, it's a little interesting because I was, looking up some stuff on Arkansas, and a lot of the FBIs and things like that have them in the the high 30s and 40s. So they're expecting some improvement. I think a lot of that starts with they have a star receiver. So I guess we're going to figure out if Jameson and Thompson can really lock some people down, because they have Treylon Burks, who going to be an NFL player. So I think if you can really neutralize him, they're breaking in a new quarterback. They do return all 5 offensive linemen, and we know how SEC offensive linemen can be. They can wear you down. They don't have a superstar running back or anything like that. And their defense, obviously, it's not the dominant SEC defense that you typically used to seeing. So they're more of a patchwork job. But I think the night game factor and the fact that Arkansas just hates us. They haven't forgot about all that stuff. Grandma and Grandpa are going to be telling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. My dad hates him.
Yep.
More than OU almost. Like, he remembers all the crap. So for me, it's like you just said, Jay, if you're prepared and you execute and you get plus quarterback play and you hand the damn ball off to number 5, you should check it off as a W. That's the way I see it.
I think the talent advantage here is leads to a Texas win. I think could be a close one starting out, and some punches, be kind of a slugfest to open up. But I think Texas comes out with the win.
Yeah, I feel the same. Even though that's a night game up there, they're going to be hyped up for this. But no, that's a win for me. So after that, then we talk about a Rice game that
Get the backups in.
Yeah, like this is the game where you hope that you get Jordan Whittington healthy too, so he can play a quarter and a half and sit and rest for a Big 12 play to start after that. This is the game that you want Bijan to have 12 carries, 106 yards and 2 scores and spread it around to everybody else. This is where you're going to hopefully find some of those receiver hopefully you can solve some of those receiver depth issues if you haven't already, because they're going to be tested early on. But by the time we get to this Rice matchup, this is going to be a place leading into Big 12 play to really fine tune some of that stuff. So this isn't, even though somebody famously said, you can't expect to beat Rice every year. We have, this is a year where they should stump a mud hole in them. This is one where we should see Texas score 70 points, to be honest. And with the way that this offense is going to run, and I think this is going to be one that Sark's going to want to make a point going into Big 12 play as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, completely agree. It's going to be a good opportunity to get some players that maybe didn't get on the field too much the first couple games in, and really start getting ready for the conference slate. So
you hope to see your Jonathan Brooks, you get a couple of Roshan touchdowns, you get Jatavian Sanders out there, some of the younger tight ends, maybe rotating some of the younger, too deep on the offensive line, see what you have, the young secondary in the second half. Yeah, it should just be a win. So coming off, and you want to escape without injury. That's the most important thing out of that game for me. So then we move on to everyone's favorite Texas Tech, everyone's favorite cousin out in the sand. So you guys' thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think this is a Texas win. Tech is not. I don't think Tech is at the spot right now to come out of Austin with a win in this. I know the game in Lubbock last year was insane, but I think and this is going to be interesting. I think the subplot here is all these, the teams that, with the breakup of the Big 12 that's looming, I think there's going to be a little extra spice to some of these games. So who knows? But I think Tech is at this point where Texas should be able to handle this team. And, again, it might be a close one that Texas pulls away in the fourth quarter, but I think being 4-0 after the Tech game is very much within the realm. No. Honestly, I think just going game by game on this. Now it's going to get interesting after this game, but this is where I think that a 4-0 start is completely within the realm of possibility.
Well, and it's going to be important to pile up these wins early in the season, because that strength of the schedule, we're not necessarily like the Louisiana game obviously helps for that because they're a top 25 team. But as this Big 12 schedule starts to unravel and you start to hit these other teams that are worthy of discussion in the Big 12 conversation, they're going to need to be out in front of this and be 3-0, 4-0 when we talk about, because I think this Tech game is a win as well. But going to TCU for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but it always bothers me making that trip to Fort Worth. And
as it
Mike,
should.
Mike, is Tech a win for you right now? Is it at home? Do you think that's a victory?
I know you got the Tyler Show, the transfer from Oregon quarterback in them. They got a couple of good receivers, some returning linemen, but they don't have any defense other than their linebackers. Just handle your business, and we should be able to move on from this. But you bring up a good point. TCU, this is one that I got an L for right here. It's just Gary Patterson just does what he does, I guess. He just hates burnt orange. I don't really know what his deal is with that. They get 9 starters back on the offense. If Max Dugan, if he does anything to help their defense, that's just a plus. They got some real wild cards like Zach Evans, a huge recruit a few years ago. If he gets his head on straight, he could be a game breaker. They got the kid Quentin Johnson from Temple, who was committed to Texas for a while. He's looking for a big season. And they're just always solid on defense. Their defensive ends are honestly, they might be the 2 best defensive ends in the country, as a tandem. They're going to play defense. They lost some in the back end, obviously, a couple of guys that went to the NFL. But I don't know, man. Like this road test, you talk about, the whole Big 12 thing. They're one of the teams that is going to have a hard time finding a home if once the Big 12 kind of goes away, hopefully. So they're going to be pissed, and Gary Patterson would love to stick it to Texas, a few more times before we get out of there. So, what are you guys' thoughts on?
Yeah, Kerry. For me, like, this is a tale of two schedules. I feel like you have the first 4 games of the season, and then you have the last 8. And because when you start getting into this, the bread and butter of this Big 12 schedule, it picks up, and it picks up fast. Like this TCU matchup is going to be one that, for me, it always seems to give Texas struggle. Patterson just seems to do well. Even they may even play a little bit of his country song that he released and over the loudspeakers and all that stuff, because he's just that dude. Take it on back, or whatever. He's that dude. But it's like, how do you overcome that hump? And I feel like outside of the Louisiana test, like the TCU game will be Coach Sarkisian's first real, like, okay, how does he react to some adversity that will probably be brought against him just because Patterson's that good of a coach? This could very easily be a loss for me. There's a stretch here with TCU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Iowa State where if you don't handle your business early in the season and you get your daubers down, this can go horribly wrong extremely fast, man.
Yeah, this is really a toss-up game for me because, we talk about Gary Patterson. For whatever reason, he's had these previous coaching staff's numbers. And I don't know. We don't know how Sark is going to match up against Gary Patterson in this regard. This one for me, though, this kind of feels like, this is going to be an interesting environment. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think I'm with Mike on this. I think Texas doesn't leave with a win in Fort Worth, which is great. TCU can put that on their mantle and,
forever.
Forever as Texas goes on to the SEC. But that's, a good consolation prize for, whatever. But I think this is, I think Texas loses this game, and the next game looms, and that's where I think that's why there might, I don't want to call it a trap game, but there might be a little bit of that with this TCU game with Oklahoma looming a week later.
Yeah, you could be staring at the number 1 or number 2 team in the country. I mean,
yeah.
So I think that Texas wins against TCU, and I think that this is and by then, if Texas is 5-0, then you're probably talking about, like you said, going into Dallas, going into the State Fair. This is a top 10 matchup against Oklahoma, and it's
going to be a long drive.
Yeah, well, it usually is, to be honest. But how are you guys feeling? I mean, like this to me, and I've got, without giving away before we get to our end of the season predictions, I've got Oklahoma doing some pretty big things this season. So, is this a matchup? I mean, I'm looking forward to this, obviously, between 2 head coaches that are known for their sort of just like, how to describe it. Just, it's just like, Lincoln Riley is the all gas, no brakes without saying it for me. Like that's really his deal. And Sarkisian is just the guy that says it out loud, so this is a loss for me. But I feel like, again, if you're passing that eye test against Oklahoma, if you can show me that it's not just another, you roll up there and then you lay down, like that's going to matter a lot to me in terms of how I'm viewing Sarkisian's first season as the head coach. This is a loss for me, but I do feel like we could get a lot out of this game.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. I think Texas comes out of this first half of the schedule at 4-2. I think, but it feels a little different than 4-2 maybe under previous coaches, like because of that eye test. I think this could all change, but I just, I agree with Jay. I don't think this team is going to go up to Dallas and look, like they're not meant to be playing against what will most likely be, a top 3 team. So, I think they'll hang around. I don't think it'll be bad, but I do think it'll be a loss. I just don't think Texas is right. They're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, something special would have to happen. You need a 240-yard game from Bijan and, some turnovers from Rattler. But from all accounts, he's improving. I mean, these guys are, they're just absolutely loaded. Their receiver, tight ends back, front seven's really good. They do have some weaknesses, though. Secondary is not very good. Some question marks on the offensive line. And running back depth, they got 2 guys. So if anybody wants to try out for OU running back, now's the time to do it.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I would probably get off the ball as soon as they handed it to me. So, yeah, I think they have Eric Gray at running back and they have Kennedy Brooks back. So it's not like they don't have any running backs, but they have a couple of guys transfer, academically ineligible as Marcus Majors. All they can do is just spread it out 5 wide, do whatever they want to do, because Lincoln Riley knows what to do. And that's what we're hoping from Sark. He knows that he puts his best, what he has, he utilizes. And so they get the transfer in from Arkansas, Mike Woods, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. So it's like just all over the field. They have potential defensive player of the year, Nick Benito. So no, this is not a win. And if the game is close, it's because one of 2 things happened. Bijan went completely bonkers and the defense, played to its potential. Or the second thing is that we have something in Hudson Card or Casey Thompson that we did not realize at the beginning.
Right.
Those are 2 things that you just don't know if those are going to happen. So,
well, guys, let's we're kind of up against it here on this break. So we've just hit the halfway point on this schedule. So I guess we're all kind of on the same page with looking at about a 4-2 record, the halfway point, right?
Yeah. I'm at 5-1, but I could see 4-2. Like my losses for this team are coming later in the season, but yeah, I could see 4-2 being the case. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll hit the back end of that schedule before we get into the national and the rest of the Big 12 scene. And yeah, we'll be right.
And
we'll
make
be back
my
in just a
terrible
sec.
predictions.
Let's do it.
All right. See you all in a sec. Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, Texas football season preview. And let's get back into it here. Mike, I'll let you bring back up our schedule talk here as we hit the second half of the season. Before we went to break, we essentially said, hey, we're looking at kind of a 4-2. Jay's got a 5-1, kind of record after the first 6 games. This back end of the schedule for me gets pretty interesting, though. The front one's pretty interesting, but it's to me, this is where the season is truly made, because I don't think, as much as we would all like to see Texas beat Oklahoma, there's no shame, that's not, this season, there's no shame losing to that bunch up there, given what they're returning, given what the expectations are. But this could get really interesting in the second half. Let's start with this Oklahoma State game. Texas returns home after the trip to Dallas to get Oklahoma State. What do we make of this? What is Oklahoma State going to be this season?
For me, they're just like a wild card.
I
know Gundy likes his defense this year, but there's not a lot of like standouts on the defensive side for these guys. And I think it's a wild card also because nobody knows what Spencer Sanders is going to do on a game-to-game basis. Is he
no Chuba
rolled, or is no Chuba? All the receivers are gone. So I know at some points LD Brown actually looked pretty good. But yeah, it really just rides on Spencer Sanders. And I think our defense just puts a lot of pressure on him. Unless he's shown me something that says that he's not a turnover machine, or just, has really progressed.
Right.
I don't see them stopping our running game. And by this point, you should have a more developed passing attack at this point, or at least know what you have, so that way you can scheme, especially you're coming off of playing 2 really good defenses. So you would think the combination of everything, I got this as a win. What do you guys think?
Yeah, same for all those same reasons. I think if Tom Herman was able to go in there last year and find a win when the team was really reeling, then I think the game in Austin is not, I don't say it shouldn't be a problem, but I think Texas should be favored in this by a decent amount and should handle business. Jay, what do you
Yeah,
think?
this is the one for me where I think we see Coach Sarkisian's first real slip up as a head coach. I feel like coming off of that Oklahoma game where I feel like Texas will be in that game. I think they'll pass the eye test in Dallas, even though we're all at a consensus that they probably won't win that game. I feel like coming back to Austin here, and it's just one of those things where I feel like there's going to be a letdown at some point this season where we're going to question whether it was play calling, whether it was personnel, whether somebody's nicked up, and then there's guys that are trying to figure out their place in this team. And for me, I don't know. This just feels weird to me coming off of that Oklahoma game to then have Oklahoma State come into town. This is where I feel like this is the slip up for Texas. This is a loss for me in the second half of the season. And that's why I mentioned it was so important for me to start off 4-0, 5-0, whatever it is, to pile up those early wins, because this 4-game stretch with Oklahoma State at Baylor, and then Iowa State, this is a tough stretch right here. And I think for me, this might be where we see that first sort of, what's the way to put it, but just where we see that slip up, I guess, from a new head coach, from a new staff. And this for me, this ends up being a loss.
Interesting. Okay. So essentially, we're looking at Texas, however you cut it, we're all looking at Texas having about 2 losses coming out of that not Stillwater, but the game against Oklahoma State and Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting, because then going to Baylor, and this is not a Baylor team that I don't think anybody should be incredibly worried about. But Jay, we'll start with you here, because if this is where Sarkisian and this staff have kind of their first big, speed bump in this program, how do they respond? I mean, there's a bye week in there. How do they respond on the trip, with the trip to Waco?
Yeah, see, that's the key for me, and I'm glad you brought that up with that week off here, because it's the right time, and you'll have coaches always say, "Oh, the bye week just came at the right time." You'll always hear that. "Oh, we just really needed that bye week," and I think that this team truly will need that bye week. Will benefit from this bye week coming after the Oklahoma State game, and go up to Waco and handle business. Now, I mean, I think that Baylor bounces back a little bit this year. I think that it's not going to be that same team that we saw last year necessarily. But I don't think that Texas goes up there and lays an egg. But this, to me, Mike, is going to be one of those games where, for me anyways, obviously with the way that I'm feeling coming off the down game against Oklahoma State, a bye week going up to Waco, and we'll learn real quick again the type of head coach that Steve Sarkisian is going to be for this football program as they respond really well with the convincing win in Waco. How are you feeling about this matchup?
Yeah, on paper, I mean, this should be 2-3 scores at least. But this is the one road game that I think the fans outside of the Arkansas night game is going to be very hostile. Depending on the time of this game, I expect it to be an early morning game, maybe even an afternoon game. This is a night game. And Baylor is not happy, like TCU's not happy with the whole split up. They're one of the ones that have a hard time finding their way after all this kind of shakes out with conference realignment. And, those fans are going to be absolutely ready from the start of the game to the very end. But I just don't think they don't have a lot there. It's going to be a new quarterback. They haven't had much success recruiting recently. Had a couple of good receivers, but this is not the Baylor defense that, from past couple of years. So for me, it's a win. I just don't see anything much other than maybe a hostile environment getting in the way. So, and even with that, you should still have more talent.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I think Texas comes out with the win, but I think with those factors that you're mentioning, this might be a closer game than maybe, the spread would suggest by the time that this game comes around. It's probably going to be at least a 2-score, 2-touchdown kind of spread in favor of Texas, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Then wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 7 or 10 point win kind of thing, where it's like, all right, that was a little tougher because of all those factors. But yeah, I think Texas comes out of there with a win. But I think those factors make Texas a little bit more prepared for what's to come the following week and the trip to Ames. Mike, we'll start with you on this one. How do you feel about this trip to Iowa State?
Yeah, not good. This is a good Iowa State team. Man, there's not another back you'd want in the conference than Breece Hall, really in the nation.
Yep.
I mean, they're the two headliners in the nation right now. Lots of returning talent. They're really good defensively. Mike Rose up for defensive, probably going to be up for all the defensive awards at linebacker. Charlie Kolar feels like he's been there since the dawn of time. So at that tight end position, they just got a lot of talent, and I think Texas can get one of the TCU or Iowa State game. I wouldn't be shocked if they got one or the other. But I don't think they're going to get both. So I've still got this as a loss just on paper. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas went and beat TCU and lost to Oklahoma and Iowa State, or beat Iowa State and fumbled around with TCU. So for me, it's just a lot of talent. This is Iowa State's year, essentially. I would assume that they're going to go all out and give it everything they got. And on paper, this is one of the matchups where Texas doesn't have as quite an advantage as it would in other areas, especially defensively. So, what are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is the tough one. Campbell's such a good coach, and the question is like that. I know that he's being asked a lot too. Is like, what the hell are you still doing here? Like, what are you doing on this campus still, man? Like, he's got NFL offers by all accounts.
He's playing the long game to finally coach a school in the AAC.
Well, he's on his way if he sticks around. But no, I mean, for me, this Iowa State team with what they're bringing back with 3 guys on the AP All-American first team with Hall, Kolar, and what's the linebacker again?
Mike Rose.
Yeah, like that's not an accident. Like, this is a talented team with a coach that puts his players in the best positions possible and has them ready to play. You're not going to see this Iowa State team very often show up and look unprepared. Like, this is a good team. This is a really good program right now. And yeah, maybe on paper, when you put hat over hat, is Texas a more talented team? Possibly, very possibly. But this is going to be one of those, as we get towards the end of this schedule, that we're going to learn so much about Steve Sarkisian as a coach. Again, do you go up there and do you get the brakes beaten off of you by a really good team, starting off the season as a top 10 team, top 7 team? It looks like AP has a number 7. Like, do you go up there and are you respectable in a defeat? Do you pull one out here? Like, this could be, it's as crazy as it might seem. Like, Iowa State can be a signature win for Steve Sarkisian in his first year. It's crazy to say that, but it's in this instance, this could be a tone setter. And this is where Texas, for me, the difference between 8 and 10 wins. When you talk about, Mike, when you talked about earlier in the season, that TCU loss being a loss for both of you guys, this is the difference for me in whether or not Texas is even in the discussion for a Big 12 championship at the end of the season, or if they're just, if they're just making their way. If Steve Sarkisian, if we're seeing the development. I think this is a loss for me. But again, like this stretch from TCU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, like you said, pissed off people in Waco. I mean, they're already mad because they live in Waco. But then you have another Iowa State matchup that is going to be, that could be, depending on where Texas is ranked, that's another top 15 matchup in the country, and if Texas is doing the things that they need to do. So it's a loss for me. But again, pass the eye test, man. Don't go up there and get the brakes beaten off of you. Don't get out coached. Don't just absolutely get out coached by Matt Campbell, which is easy to do. But this is a loss for me. And then, Kerry, you said, this is a loss for you, or how are you feeling about this?
This is not a loss for me.
Oh,
This is not a loss for me.
Here we go.
No, I think, Jay, you hit it on the head. I think this is, I think this is going to be the signature win for Sarkisian this year. This gives me, it's not the same magnitude, but Mac and Ricky going to Nebraska in year one and setting the tone and saying, okay, this thing is getting back on the rails. I am not as high on Iowa State as, I mean, just in general. I think, and especially matched up against Texas. I mean, we look at the last couple seasons, if not for, a stupid penalty in a bad spot and completely miserable game management from Tom Herman, Texas is winning the last two. They had that game in Ames. They had the game last season. Now, if Dicker can read his progressions, so this is not, I mean, all respect to Matt Campbell. He's earned all the accolades that he's got, but it's not like he's been bringing, the Cyclones into Austin or playing at home against Texas, just beating the brakes off them. They haven't done that since, when was it, when Gerard Hurd got shut out against Charlie Strong. But to me, I see Texas going up there and making a statement. And I think Iowa State's a really good team, but this, again, it's the same personnel that this team has seen the last couple of years, and still nearly got out with wins against really good teams with piss poor coaching on the Texas side. So I do think by the time this game, now if this game was earlier in the season, I might feel differently about it, because I do think I fully expect by November 6th for the quarterback position to be more stable. I expect the offense to be clicking. And I think this defense is going to get sorted out. And I think that's going to be the difference maker here, is that when Texas will have adequate coaching finally, and then that talent will be the difference against a team like Iowa State. So if the coaching is a wash, or even, close to being a wash, then you go with the talent. And that's where, I don't know. Now, I still think Iowa State, that being said, I still have them doing really well in this conference. And we'll get to that when we talk about the kind of big conference picture, but I have Texas going up there and winning this game. And I think it's going to be the statement win of the season.
I like it.
So that to me will be a tone setter, man. And I hope you're right. I hope you're right about that, because again, that's a win against Matt Campbell on the road in your first year. Well, could definitely, no matter how this season ends, could be great. I'm not in on that, but I could totally understand why you would be. And then after that one,
bye week,
Kansas. I was gonna say, this is another opportunity heading into a game in Morgantown that nobody ever likes to go there. But Kansas, do we need to discuss this? I mean, do they have anything that interests either one of you guys? Because for me, this is a non-discussion point. This is another, you put up 65 and you give a lot of young guys and inexperienced players some reps. Do we need to discuss this any further?
No, not really. I think if all these things that we're talking about with this coaching staff and the talent level are actually legit, then no, there's nothing to discuss here. And we shouldn't be talking about it kicking a last-second field goal to beat Kansas and Austin. That shouldn't be the case. So I think this is.
Are you saying that we should, the official Texas football Twitter account shouldn't be tweeting out Celine Dion Celine Dion Titanic stuff when the field goal goes in against Kansas this year? Is that what you're saying?
They shouldn't
That might
tweet
be
anything from this
lowest
game. Like, it
points.
should just be
Man,
like,
yeah,
here's the final score.
yeah.
Like, there's nothing notable about this.
We're on to West Virginia. We're on to West Virginia.
Exactly. So on that West Virginia point, I'll start off on this one and see what you guys think. To me,
All right.
this is the trap.
Don't you do it.
This is the trap.
Yeah.
No, so this is where, I mentioned the note, the kind of tone setter, the signature win at Iowa State. To me, this one feels tricky. I think there's a lot of factors at play with it. Morgantown's going to be tough. This is probably going to be a night game. The Big 12 falling apart issue. For whatever reason, this is my gut feeling of like, this is where we're going to see the referee like screw job. Like, there's going to be some wacky things that come out of this game. And to me, this is the game that I think keeps Texas from playing in a Big 12 championship. To me, I feel like this is a loss.
The Morgantown screw job.
Yeah, that's my gut feeling on this. I don't think we're going to see that at TCU or at Baylor. Like, I flat out just think TCU is going to, I think they're good enough to just win that game without any of the chicanery. And I think Baylor's too bad for that to really have an effect on the outcome of that. I think West Virginia is where we'll see some shenanigans.
I love it because, oh man, I was just talking about that stuff yesterday.
It has that feel. And this is, their president and AD have been the ones talking about, well, we've got the vote that can sink this whole 12-team playoff thing. Like, I think this is where we're going to see some funny business. And yeah, I think Texas gets out with a loss, gets out of there coming home with a loss in a weird circumstances where people go like, oh man, how much can you actually put on Sark for what happened there, kind of thing. So to me, this is my third loss of the season for Texas.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. You got Jared Dagey, got a good running back, Letty Brown. You got some okay talent at receiver. One of the Sills brothers is still there. I think a little bit of talent, but yeah, I just think at some point this season we're going to see something that just kind of look with our side eye, like really.
Right.
Yeah.
And the environment there. We talk about a hostile environment. Given all these factors we're talking about, if this is a night game in Morgantown, this might be more of a hostile environment than what the Horns see in Fayetteville.
Sure.
Like, this could be, you talk about the couch burning and the whole thing. Like, this could be the wildest atmosphere that Texas walks into this season. Seriously. And yeah, I don't know. It has that feel for some real, I don't know, jokes.
I'm still coming out with Texas with the W. What do you got, Jay?
So I already have Texas at this point in the schedule with 3 losses. And with our discussions that we've had, with the way things could possibly go, with what we think this floor could be if things go right, we sort of discussed 9 wins being, if everything goes right, that 9 wins should be the floor. I don't think Texas wins this game either. I think this is the 4th loss on the schedule for Texas this season, because I do think this is a night game in Morgantown. I think the schedule makers are going to stick it to Texas and make sure it's a night game. The decision makers, the television, whoever. And you can't put your finger on anything in Morgantown, period. and unfortunately, while I do think that this team will look more improved, while I do think that it will pass the eye test more often, again, there's a reason why I said it was so important to get those wins early in the season, because I feel like this is another loss. And I don't know why it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. But I just feel like by this point in the season, with some of the depth issues at wide receiver that we've discussed, with some of the depth issues at linebacker that we've discussed, I don't know if this Texas team, by the end of this year, in the first year under this coaching staff, is going to have what it takes to finish as strong as I would like them to. So for me, unfortunately, and knowing that we have the Kansas State game coming up at home still, this to me, I think Texas drops to 7-4 at this point in the schedule with the loss in Morgantown. And the discussions that we're having are more based on how is Steve Sarkisian and his staff going to rebound against Kansas State and show that they can battle adversity. This is a tough schedule. Yeah. All of the things, with the Big 12, we talk about how it's going to dissolve. Whether it sticks around, whatever form it is, there are still some really good football teams in this conference, and teams that on any given week can give a team some trouble, especially at home in this West Virginia instance. And I don't feel like they get out of Morgantown with the victory here. I think that they're 7, my prediction at this point in the schedule is that they're 7-4. And the discussion that we're having is, okay, can Sarkisian make that jump to 8 wins, win a bowl game, get to 9 wins, which again, I think that is where Texas ends up this year, as a 9-win team after a bowl. But this is a loss for me.
All right. Well, then how do you think this thing wraps up against K-State at home to end the season? I personally think this is a win for Texas. Yeah. I think whatever black magic Kansas State football was holding over this program for however many years, I think it's gone. And I think they're just not the same program that they once were. And so I think Texas gets the win to wrap up the season. I'm saying 9-3 regular season. And I still think, but I think 3 conference losses is going to be too much to keep Texas in contention for the Big 12 championship game. What do you guys think?
Mike, go
ahead. Yeah, I think Kansas State's pretty talented. You get Skylar Thompson back, Deuce Vaughn.
Yep.
Always had a solid defense, but I think their strengths on offense play into the strengths of our defense.
Right.
So, and I just don't think that works. I mean, yeah, come on, let's go. Front 7, barring any significant injuries. Even with injuries to the defensive line, I still think it's just too much. I think we'll be able to contain Deuce. Look at what we did last year. It's almost the same guys, basically.
Right. And that was in Manhattan.
That was in Manhattan, yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's 9-3. Yeah, I mean, I think the season's slated at 8.5 wins. So it's, where are you at? Are you below it? Or are you above it? I'm just above it because I do believe in Sarkisian. I do believe that most games you will have the best player in the game in Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just a different look. And when's the last time we've been this strong up front defensively? Is going to be a key factor, and it's the depth up front, which is really going to help out our defense this year. And I think if we could just get a couple of guys going on the offense with Bijan, that 9 wins is where I'm at right now. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm with you in the sense of the Kansas State win being a win here. This is, again, we see a run of games where Sarkisian has to make adjustments, has to react on the fly. And then the next week having to come in and really show, okay, I'm not going to lose this locker room at this point. I'm not going to let these kids get their daubers down and let this ruin our season with the progress that I feel like they will make, especially with the eye test and being prepared. Because I don't think any of these losses necessarily are going to be because of a lack of preparation.
Right.
Maybe you look at a West Virginia game and anything can happen in Morgantown. But for me, it's really it's a win for me. It's an 8-4 regular season. I'm on the underside of that win total. But would I be surprised if Texas won 10 games this year in the regular season? I wouldn't be. Like, if we're sitting here at the end of this season and we're having that conversation, I'm not just going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe Sark pulled this off. I just don't see those bounces all going his way in his first year here. So that's sort of why I'm on the other side of that with an 8-4 regular season and probably a good bowl win when you give a coach like that time to prepare. Now, as we're looking at this slide here with the Big 12 conference, obviously I don't think any of us have Texas competing for a Big 12 championship this year. Oklahoma is the out and out favorite, as they should be, to win this conference. Iowa State's right there behind them with a whole lot of talent. Is it Iowa State, Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship for you guys?
Yeah, it is for me. Unless something goes hilariously wrong for Oklahoma, I don't think that they're losing 3 conference games. I don't think they're losing 2 conference games. And I feel the same way about Iowa State. I mean, I think even though I think Texas goes up there and wins, I don't see them losing 2 to 3 conference games where I feel like I can say that about everyone else in the Big 12. So I think just by nature of that, I think this is going to be Oklahoma, Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. At that point, I mean, who knows who wins that game? And I think Oklahoma wins the league, and I think they win the conference championship game. But I mean, I wouldn't shock me if Iowa State won the conference title. And so, yeah, for me, they're the two runaway favorites. Real quick on the Texas thing, Jay, you mentioned, would it surprise you if Texas won, 9 games, 10 games? It wouldn't surprise me either. Like if things click the way that it does, what would surprise me is if like Texas only wins 7 games or something of that sort. So could bounces go their way where Texas is in the Big 12 championship? Sure. I just don't think that's going to happen. I agree with Jay that I just don't see the bounces continuously going that way for Texas throughout the year. And likewise, I don't see any other team in the conference getting to the level of Oklahoma State or Oklahoma and Iowa State throughout the year. So,
yeah, I think the only 2 that could are Texas and TCU.
Yeah,
at least for me. And that's barring. And I think if Rattler gets injured, that could change a lot of things for OU. But even if Purdy gets injured, I think Iowa State's still pretty talented. I actually like Iowa State to potentially win the Big 12 title.
I think they could, though, yeah.
Yeah, if I had to bet, obviously put my money on Oklahoma. This is one of their best teams in last 20 years. So that's saying a lot. But for me, I wouldn't be surprised because Iowa State's already beaten them. They've already shown they can beat them. They've got all the same guys back. They really took advantage of the super seniors this year. So yeah, everything's there for them. So Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, this is Oklahoma's conference to lose, and I think they'll take care of business. I just think they're too good, too talented, too well coached. Just in general, I don't see anybody competing with Oklahoma at this level at this time. Matt Campbell's a great coach. I think he'll give it a heck of a run. But for me, that's not it's not really a conversation for me. I think this is Oklahoma's conference to lose, absolutely. And as we're sort of looking at this year, when we have a handful of these players on a national level to discuss, I mean, DJ Uiagalelei for me he's my Heisman Trophy winner this year.
Wow.
I feel like Clemson is going to be that good. I feel like he's going to have that big of a year. They call him Big Cinco for a reason. Like he's that dude for me. I know there's a ton of talent all across the country, especially in the SEC. And then you look at Ohio State, how they're loaded. Mac Brown in North Carolina, he's sort of injected life into that program again as he's rediscovered his love for coaching and recruiting and things like that. But yeah, Uiagalelei for me is the guy that wins the Heisman this year. We got a lot of talented players on this screen right now across the country. How do you guys feel like some of this national picture sort of shakes out?
Well, I think Heisman wise, as much as I hate saying it, I think Rattler, if Oklahoma has the type of season that they're projected to have, and he takes that next step, I don't see how he's not in New York and and as a favorite. I think, man, I think you can kind of go pick your group of players that make that trip to New York. I know we talked about Bijan if Texas has the kind of season that exceeds expectations, but yeah, I think it's gonna be Rattler Heisman for me. I'll wait. I'll save my playoff picks for here in a minute. But Mike, what are you thinking?
Bryce Young, man. Until I see something different from Alabama, I'm just gonna pick Alabama for everything.
Right.
Like
understandable, man. I get it.
Like I don't. It's like, you know, there's no reason not to. Essentially, super talented kid. Can't wait to see it on the field this year. I think there's a lot of interesting players. Not CJ Spiller, man, that's a throwback right there.
Oh man.
Yeah, seriously, Isaiah Spiller, A&M. JT Daniels is kind of interesting with Georgia. Garrett Wilson, who should be here in Austin, probably gonna have a pretty good year. This Kyron Williams kid, man, he runs like a 4.3 at Notre Dame, so he's pretty explosive. We'll see how they do with him. But I really like Desmond Ridder too, from Cincinnati, and they're kind of a dark horse, obviously, to get into that playoff picture. So he's a pretty talented player. And then obviously you can't discount Mac, Sam Howell, those guys that lost a lot of talent, but he's going to be the guy. But he's going to have to put up stupid numbers for them to get to where they need to go. So
they're going to ride him until the wheels fall off in Chapel Hill, man. And just going to be one of those things where they're going to go as far as he carries them. And he has the talent to carry them a long way. They're a top 10 team to start the season. And I feel like that's another team to watch in the ACC there, in North Carolina, with Howell there. So, but yeah, do you guys want to let's talk a little bit about some playoff picks here in national champions. Kerry, do you want to start it off?
Yeah, for sure. We got a little over 2 minutes here. We'll hit them real quick. My playoff picks, I'm going Alabama, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Ohio State.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, I got Alabama, Oklahoma. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Georgia. And I actually think that Ohio State gets back in there. I mean,
yeah,
it's just the same damn guys. I think Clemson, I don't know. I got to see a full season of it, I guess. They have such an easy path to it, but if they fall on one of those games that they're not supposed to, that could be super interesting. There's a trap there somewhere for them if they don't take care of business. So Jay?
It's a trap. Yeah, I got Bama. I'm pretty much going across the board. Just I got Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Ohio State in there. However you want to move it around. Georgia could sneak in because I think that even if Georgia beats Clemson in that first matchup of the season, Clemson can still find a way back into the playoff. I don't think Georgia – I just don't feel like – I don't trust that coach. I don't trust him to get it done in a big spot. We've seen it time after time. It's like, show me. It's not there. But for me, I don't know how it pans out to get that way, but the national title game for me is Oklahoma and Clemson, and I have Clemson winning the whole thing this year.
Yeah, I got a little under a minute here. I'm until proven otherwise, I am thinking it's going to be Alabama beating Ohio State, the national title.
Yeah, I got Alabama winning it all as well. So,
well, guys, before we get caught here on the Zoom break, this has been a pleasure, man.
Hey,
let's see how this plays out. Let's can't wait for opening day next week, guys.
Let's have a good year.
Love doing this.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Yeah. Hook 'em. We'll see y'all.
Hook 'em.